With the way WoW currently is and the World Soul Saga ending and the new Netflix deal from just a few months back, we could legit be on the verge of WoW 2. This has been a topic that people have been discussing for over a decade, but currently the stars are really aligning in a way that not only makes this possible, but actually very likely. The saga is supposed to wrap up pretty much the entire history of Azeroth, and it is setting the way for Azeroth to actually settle down. This could transport us into a future version where WoW 2 could be based. Think about Azeroth, but in like 100 years. So all new characters, but the same legacy of our planet, similar zones. The saga is supposed to end by the 25th anniversary, which is the perfect time for such an announcement. WoW is already running multiple versions of the older games, so could WoW 2 actually be around the corner, and what would it look like? While WoW 2 would be a massive revamp to World of Warcraft, Incognito would be a massive revamp to your own internet privacy. So if you ever googled your name, you might realize that quite a lot of websites have your information, and this can be used for a ton of nefarious purposes, from getting random phone calls, spam email, to really bad situations where people know where you live, and this can lead to actual scams. I personally had random phone calls from various countries coming out of nowhere. This is where Incognito comes in. You sign up, give them your bare minimum info, and they contact over 230 data brokers on your behalf, so they remove your data from the internet. They will even go back and forth if the brokers push back. Most importantly, they're on watch 24/7, so they don't just do it once, they are constantly looking out for you. So if you want your data off the market, right now they're offering a crazy 60% off the annual plan, so click my link below or use the promo code Doron. Check out incognito.com/Doron. WoW 2 as an option has been a theme of discussion for pretty much as long as WoW has existed, especially after a few expansions already passed, and especially after Legion, when really the main Burning Legion storyline was gone. That was kind of the key point of Warcraft 3. However, now is a really unique moment that never really happened before, where it is a totally realistic option, and WoW has never been in a situation like this. So first of all, what is very important is that Blizzard doing something like this wouldn't at all be a giant experiment or some massive shot in the dark that was never done before. There are plenty of games that had sequels like this, especially MMORPGs, and we've seen this happen pretty much to every other popular MMORPG, that really WoW is sort of in a unique spot where they had never done this. However, interesting enough, Blizzard actually did Overwatch 2, so a very similar thing, although, obviously that works a bit differently, as Overwatch is not an MMORPG, it doesn't track the same progress with characters like WoW does. 20 years of character progress is definitely a really big deal, and here your own character is pretty much like your own online avatar, so it's definitely a bit different. One thing to keep in mind though, and I know for us that you've been playing the game since forever, as personally I've been playing Warcraft as a franchise since before I started school. It is crazy to think about that WoW was released over 20 years ago. You may remember they had a big anniversary last year, but the game has been out for over 2 decades at this point. In fact, we are close to 21 years at the moment, which is someone's whole life until adulthood, and barely any game on the market has survived like this or kept its relevancy for such a crazy long time. A lot of old school games definitely still exist, and most of them are like these nostalgia type games or have this underground scene, but WoW is definitely still going quite strong. In fact, last year we've learned that WoW has over 7 million subscribers across the various versions of the game, which is a crazy statistic, as people had expected it to be a lot less since they stopped reporting sub numbers like they did in what is now ancient history. Now, the reason I'm making this video is not because it is about time it happens, but because the game right now is in a very unique spot with the World Soul Saga, that it is set to wrap up a whole era of World of Warcraft. In fact, that saga will likely end by the 25th anniversary, which is a huge milestone as well, and most importantly because Blizzard told us that they have the next 20 years of the game planned out. However, another big reason why it could happen is because we already have multiple versions of the game going on. It's not exactly WoW 2, but we've got Classic, and it has been going on so long that soon it's going to start catching up to the Shadowlands. And we also got the Season of Discovery, which is an experimental version of Classic that is actually introducing new lore, retconning some things. So this is a very weird version of WoW that we can't even pinpoint what exactly it is, with some new gameplay. Instead of WoW 2, this is like WoW 0.5 1.5, but it is sort of a different step. So just with this in mind, think about it. I know when we say WoW 2, we see this as a bit of an exciting but also cataclysmic event where it would mean that this is truly an end to the era, our characters are getting deleted or just placed for maintenance, but honestly, with the way things are going with the old version of WoW going at the same time as retail, I do think it could potentially keep going on. I don't necessarily think with the focus on WoW 2 being a thing that WoW itself is going to continue with the same pace as it is now, and likely it would be on maintenance, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is something bleak or something bad, like some bad scenario, and this could actually be a good thing for the game and the franchise. When it comes to the franchise, WoW is very much completely different compared to StarCraft, for example. I mean, StarCraft is another iconic Blizzard creation that had crazy popularity, but it just kind of died over time, unfortunately. But WoW is actually just starting to heat up again, which is really crazy considering the age. If you follow the news in the past few months, we actually have some legit, and I really mean legit, insider information that Blizzard and Netflix signed a pretty big contract for a Blizzard series. It isn't 100% certain if this is WoW yet, but it is a Blizzard title, and WoW is the most popular game that Blizzard has. By the way, this is not some forum post, it actually is happening, these are legit news. Furthermore, Chris Metzer on the past BlizzCon told us that exciting things are coming for the entire Warcraft franchise. They got the next 20 years planned for the game, so definitely Soul Saga is not going to be StarCraft 2 that is going to wrap up the entire storyline. Now the thing is, the saga really is the perfect time to start WoW 2 if they ever plan to do it. It was really never a better time. I mean, if you follow the lore, you know that all the dozens of books and all the crazy stories, really, it all amounts to the world soul of Azeroth. Essentially, almost everything that ever happened in the game is related in one way, direct or indirect, to Azeroth's world soul. And in the World Soul Saga, this is likely to completely wrap up. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of years of the planet's history. The Titans themselves are going to return, Void and the Light are going to have the final battle. Potentially something might even happen with the first ones if they didn't retcon that. So all this overarching giant storyline will likely wrap up, which will perfectly set it up for a massive reset that could potentially be WoW 2. This could give them the perfect opportunity to actually start a new game from scratch, and I'm not saying that Azeroth is going to awaken and we all just get wiped out. I think some sort of a different timeline could be possible, like Azeroth finally gets a peaceful period, finally for like a single year some crazy cosmological being isn't trying to destroy us, and then we get like a few hundred or 1,000 years after the game, and this could be where WoW 2 starts. So we still have the iconic parts of Azeroth, but with this massive time skip, we get the opportunity for a whole new start. If you're familiar with the Elder Scrolls, you know this is similar to what they had done, not just with the various single-player games, but with the Elder Scrolls Online, where it is just based in a different time period, but it kind of works flawlessly, and it actually makes everything super intriguing because we're already familiar with the world, but once again, it's not the exact same world. When it comes to this update, I know you have probably seen at least one video of the World of Warcraft in Unreal Engine and how amazing it could look, but this start wouldn't really need to be just about ultra-realistic graphics, but really it would be about gameplay, especially for games like World of Warcraft. Graphics are obviously not the most important part, and realistically, despite the fact that WoW has been going on for over 20 years, graphics are not actually that bad. I mean, keep in mind, this game came out only a few years after Warcraft 3, and compare Warcraft 3 models with the current models from the War Within. WoW is definitely keeping up really well. Blizzard has done a phenomenal job of updating the engine with new features, with dragon riding, this new seamless transition into zones and everything else. However, imagine if they did start from scratch with like 2030 technology, they could have a lot more tools to actually work with. If you've seen the most recent Witcher gameplay, you can see how amazing games can look in today's day and age. Unreal Engine crazy graphics like this probably wouldn't be super realistic for an MMORPG, but still a lot more could be done just from the graphics side. The biggest thing though is that with WoW 2, this could legit be a different game or a different type of an MMORPG, as WoW is just constantly upgrading on itself, and realistically it's just not attracting a huge mainstream audience right now like it did back in the day. Most current WoW players or people familiar with WoW are definitely around or over the age of 30, and with something like WoW 2 happening, they could have a shot at a completely new and different market. I know it does sound a bit crazy at the moment, but this wouldn't necessarily even mean that WoW itself would have to end in its current form. As I said, we're running multiple versions of the older game, and it could continue to exist, but we could have something entirely different going on with the game. As I said, with the time skip, we could have a fresh slate with a brand new characters, brand new stories, so they don't have to constantly pull a villain bigger than the previous villain. But all of this would of course be based on the legacy that WoW has already built over these decades. So while it would be fresh, it wouldn't be something we had never seen before, like it wouldn't be something alien. So really the next 2 years are going to be crucial, and we could be in for some really big news by the time the World Soul Saga ends, especially around the 25th anniversary, which is really only a few short years away. By the way, if you value your privacy, check out my link in the description and use the promo code DORON to get a crazy 60% off discount of the annual plan with Incogni. Check out incogni.com/Doron. Thanks for watching. Check out my video on Alota actually returning to the game by clicking on the screen, and check out my second channel for real world history by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.